90 minutes. Now she has freedom. She doesn't know what to do with it. First off, check it's working. Open Chrome, press the red envelope in the toolbar, loading Gmail, wait. Unable to connect to the internet. Google Chrome can't display the web page because your computer isn't connected to the internet. It is working. Leaning forward in her chair, she spends the next few minutes of freedom staring at the unresponsive red envelope. She notices that the sides and flap of the envelope are more predominant and wonders why this is so. If it is meant to act as a shadow, the perspective is all wrong. But then her eyes flick into contrastive focus and she sees the letter M, M for mail, you've got mail. Except she will now have to wait for an hour and a half to see if she has. That's freedom for you. She opens her PhD chapter and does a word count. 1897. She writes that on a piece of paper next to the keyboard, the one where she's begun to list everything she needs to Google once freedom lets her back into the system. Maybe a quick cup of tea before she begins. She gets up, goes into the kitchen, and pats the side of the kettle with her fingertips, appreciating the brief sensory excitation from the metal, still hot from her first cup of the day. Water boiling, she examines the wear and tear on her last bone china mug, the one with the long crack down the side. Before walking back into her study, she does a final check to see there's no leakage. At some point, she knows the mug won't hold, will fall apart like a cracked egg, hot tea spilling over papers and notes, and the many unread library books on her desk. Whilst sipping, she checks on the spider. Every day it spins a new web in the upper right-hand corner of her window, crouching bulbously patient in the crevice of the frame for the rest of the morning, waiting for other insects to fly towards the lit room. Spiders usually frighten her, particularly thick-set specimens like this one. But familiarity has endeared her to it, and its vocation. How still it sits in the corner of its web, like a little Buddha, patiently waiting for lunch. Although presumably it isn't conscious of waiting, of hoping, desiring food to come flying into its net. And yet how could it not be? Or she? Is she one of those spiders who consumes her partner after mating? Does every female spider do that, or just the all-out bitches of the species? The Joan Crawford spiders, the Fatal Attraction Alex Forrest spiders, and all those other arthropod equivalents with their dried-up ovaries. She adds this to the list of her topics to Google once freedom lets her returns her to infinite choice. The female of the species is more manipulative than the male. That sounds like a line from a song. Not a song I know. She and Daisy are working their way through their first bottle of Sauvignon Blanc. They always order one, thinking it will be enough, but then it isn't, and so the question inevitably arises as to whether they should go buy another glass or two or just go for bottle. They invariably end up going for the bottle. No fucking willpower, she'll say to Daisy as she fumbles with her bag in search of her credit card. No fucking willpower, Daisy yelps back ecstatically. It's become their first bottle down catchphrase. Which is why she is nursing a hangover this morning. Any excuse for not starting work and spending another 5 minutes with the itsy-bitsy spider. Cognitive reframing. Shift focus of attention away from how black and puffy looking it is. Manipulative how? Well, our men, you mean your man. Daisy has a boyfriend called Martin. Yes, probably him too. Men. They think they're hooking up for companionship and sex on tap, when in fact, they're just being maneuvered by Mother Nature into the role of progenitor and benefactor of your selfish genes, packaged in the shape of infants. Daisy smiles and tops up her glasses. Youth allows her to wear almost anything and still look effortlessly, blithely fecund. Tonight, a kind of peasant shift smock patchwork number with opaque tights and ankle boots. She feels, as ever, frowsy and blousy sitting next to her, no matter how many glasses of wine they down. On her 40th, her mother had initiated her into secrets of the older woman, explaining that the uniform her daughter had worn throughout her 30s, the trousers and blouse combo, her Meg Ryan outfit as she liked to think of it, might, as she aged, take on full-blown dyke overtones. Of course, Mother had not used that particular word. They had talked a lot that night about what it meant to enter the more saggy-arsed fourth decade vis-a-vis what not to wear. In her mother's experience, stockings, skirts, and maybe something with a bit of a heel, dear, were the way to go if she still wanted to attract a mate. Daisy's right, of course. It is an addiction, because she really, really, really needs to check her email right now. So she will check her email, circumventing Freedom, and then make a start on the chapter. For even though Freedom has disabled her computer connection to the internet, she can, of course, still do this on her mobile phone. She taps the envelope floating in the sky icon on the screen. Again, the first time she's actually noticed this. Connecting, checking for mail, waits for the revolving circle, silent drum roll, downloading three new emails. A brief surge of delight, followed by a sag. 2 notifications from the library to tell her the books she's ordered have come in. And a Twitter update. Justin Boober, at Justin_Boober, is now following you on Twitter. She clicks, waits for the text to download. Justin_Boober, combining the pop stylings of Justin Bieber with the existential wisdom of Martin Buber. 5 tweets, 1,819 following, 16 followers. She will not become a follower of Justin Bieber, but she reads his tweets all the same. Examines carefully his avatar, a rather crude photoshopping of the pop star's eyes and forehead plastered onto the philosopher's beardy jowls. She adds a question about Martin Buber to her Google post-freedom list and returns to the screen. 60 minutes. There's a kerfuffle in the garden. One of the squirrels that frequents her apple tree is standing on the stone wall that separates her property from her neighbors, and emitting a noise much louder than she ever thought squirrels were designed to make. A kind of barking or quacking sound. Just to double check that the brouhaha is actually coming from the small gray squirrel, but yes. Each time it opens its mouth, its tail bobs up with the force of producing the raspy bark. Is it warning another squirrel? Making a claim on its patch of grass? Its proprietorship of the apple harvest thudding onto the lawn like an autumnal metronome? That would make a good tweet. Apples, autumn, squirrels, metronome? But she checks her emails again instead. Reads a message from her supervisor, pointing out a new Michelle article she might find useful. Willpower over the lifespan, decomposing self-regulation. He also wonders when he might be able to see her next chapter. A chapter that Freedom is meant to be opening up the space for her to write. She carries the phone into her bedroom, tethers it to a charging cable so as to create not only distance, but functional exclusion between herself and the object, and makes her way back to freedom. Clothes are strewn over the bedpost. A vacuum cleaner lies next to the bed, waiting to be used. Clumps of dust gathering in the corners. No fucking willpower. Instead of sitting down to her chair and getting stuck in, she makes her way to the kitchen and takes a slice of date and banana cake from the freezer. She defrosts it in the microwave for a minute, boils the kettle again, decaf tea bag this time, starting to feel anxious and crabby, wouldn't want to increase the caffeine in the bloodstream. She eats the piece of cake, looking at the apple tree out the kitchen window, thinking she might make a crumble later. Now, where was she? Where is she? 30 minutes. Panicky feeling now, like looking in the rearview mirror and catching sight of yourself having a fit in the back seat. The glass is no longer even half empty, but only a quarter full, maybe less. Perhaps this is what everyone feels in the final reckoning. Even the delayed gratifiers, even the heaven believers. Yet, supposedly for them, freedom is a pleasurable countdown. When for the rest of us, it's just the knowledge that whatever moment you're experiencing now, the next is a subtraction, a depletion from the last. Freedom has always represented a future potential for her. The freedom of doing something she was perhaps born to do, being herself, truly herself, after the onerous present obligations have been fulfilled. Never the freedom of now. She wonders if her sense of freedom functions the same way as political freedom. The Arab Spring protesters all striving for a free version of themselves, once the corrupt governments have fallen, overlooking the internal chains, the inner stocks and ropes, the gibbet of self-castigating have-tos and shoulds. Before purchasing freedom, she'd wasted a whole morning researching it. Unnecessarily. She now knows that the program was created by Fred Stutzman, a postdoctoral fellow at Carnegie Mellon University, who has made a small fortune selling us his off switch. That's all freedom is, really. A cessation button, an interception, an extinction of the pressing need to be everywhere, checking everything. Nirvana, the Buddhists would say. Except, of course, our brains have no off switch. No freedom, but rather billions of hyperlinks proliferating from every stray thought. It's a wonder anyone gets anything done, ever. She sits down again, takes a sip of tea, doesn't taste it, stares at the screen. Chapter 5. She changes the font from Times New Roman into Trebuchet, and then Georgia. No, Arial. Arial is the font for saying what needs to be said, a nitty-gritty font. She begins to write the next paragraph. Stops after a sentence or two. She reads what she has written back to herself a few times, gets up, walks over to the window, scrutinizes the spider. It doesn't move, even though some tiny insects have become trapped in its web in the last hour. Little midges and gnats. It's waiting for something bigger, something significant. Or maybe it hasn't even noticed. She returns back to the lines she's just written and changes some of the phrasing. She then deletes it. The freedom window flashes up on the screen. Your freedom session is over. Well done. Finally. Finally what? She presses the Alt and Tab key to shift to her browser window and hits the red envelope for mail. @Cognopedia is now following her on Twitter. She hits refresh again to see if anyone has sent an email in the last 10 seconds. Nothing. No one. She refreshes the page. Nothing. No one. She refreshes the page.